Hi, this is Mark Arnold with another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And today I have yet another Beatles author, thanks to Charles F. Rosenay, and we'll talk about him a little bit later. This is Dana Klosner, and she has written a book called Beatlemania Lives On, Superfans in the 21st Century. So how are you today?
Good, Mark. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
I'm doing very well. So I guess the obvious question, you probably asked this if you've done other interviews, is what prompted you to write this book? There's so many books on the Beatles, so
Sure. Yeah, but there are no books on Beatles fans that I know of.
yeah.
So what happened was, I was pretty much a Beatles fan in a bubble. I didn't know any other fans. In my head, I knew there were millions of people, but I just didn't know any. And the first time I went to Liverpool in about 2004, I got on the Magical Mystery Tour bus, and
Mhm.
the bus was full, and there was people from all over the world speaking all different languages, but everybody knew the words to all the Beatles songs in the sing along. And I thought there is definitely a story in that.
Now, how did you pick stories for this? Because there's a lot of stories. I went through this and I have like 4 pages of notes of just different people you've talked to. Some I know, some I don't. I mean,
Mhm.
obviously, some are just fans, they're not famous or anything. Some are more famous than others, and we'll kind of go through a few of them.
Yeah, so really a lot of it, 98% of it was word of mouth and people hooking me up with other people. Charles hooked me up with a lot of tribute bands, and he hooked me up with all the folks in Liverpool, this Cavern City Tours that
Hmm.
runs the Cavern Club. Bill Hackle is the head honcho. And he hooked me up with Bill, who hooked me up with his protege, and he hooked me up with international tribute bands, and it was just like that. It just kept rolling.
Hmm.
Oh, and I want to thank Susan Ryan. She started everything.
Oh, I
She
know
was
her
my
too.
first interview. Yeah,
Cool.
she was my very first interview, and she runs a walking tour in New York. And she hooked me up with the first few people and really, really got everything started.
Very cool. Now, asking a question based on what you just said before that, you said you're on the Magical Mystery Tour with all the people speaking different languages. Was that Charles tour, or is that something
No,
separate? Okay,
that was I didn't know anybody at that point, and
okay.
I just started. I knew I was going to Liverpool, and I just started researching things to do in Liverpool. And so the Magical Mystery Tour bus, as it turns out, is run by Bill Heckle of
Oh,
Cavern
okay.
Tours, who Charles hooked me up with. But I was just a fan, looking for interesting sites, and that's how I found that.
Oh, okay. Because this coming year, and I'll have Charles as a guest in about a month or so. He's been on here many times, but he's I've known him as a publisher for probably 40 years. I've known him as
Mhm.
a friend probably for the last 3 years.
Okay.
So since we became friends, he's been kind of not really pressuring me. It's not pressure to come on his magical history tour, and going through the sites. I've never been to England at all, so I figured, well, here's a
Ooh.
way to do this because he
Yeah.
has it all planned out and organized and everything. Almost went this year, but circumstances beyond my control kind of kept it off. But I've been saving money, so
I
you know,
definitely recommend it. I
going next year.
kind of what do you call it? Hijacked his tour. I at the last minute last year I decided I was going to go to Beatle Week, and I just did everything on my own. I don't know why I didn't think of Charles, and I had no way of getting from London to Liverpool. And a woman that's in my book said, "Oh, you have to call Charles. He'll let you get on the bus." And he did. She didn't know he was in my book, and his bus stops at Friar Park. I mean,
Wow.
who would, yeah. So, and then in Liverpool, I kind of drifted in and out of his tour, and it was amazing. And people are amazing. I'm still in touch with some of them, and Charles is just so
Mhm.
sweet and giving and wonderful and enthusiastic and knows everything and everybody. So I highly recommend it.
Right. For those who don't know, Friar Park is where George Harrison lived for the last 30 years of his life, and I think Olivia still lives there, and I
Yeah.
think Danny still lives there too, or he might,
Hmm.
So anyway, did you meet them? Just out of
No.
curiosity. Okay, and we're
No.
out there.
No,
Hi,
that would have
tour.
been my first story if I
True. So, what is your background besides just being a Beatle fan? I mean, what prompted you to write? Have you aspired to be a writer or anything in your career?
Yeah, I'm a longtime journalist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's why the book is kind of set up the way it is. So the book, well, I guess you saw it, is it's an anthology, and what I did was I would interview the people and then write it up as an essay because as a journalist, that's what I know how to do.
Right.
Basically write an article out of an interview. So that's what the book is set up as.
Very cool. And so for your journalistic background, you've worked for local newspapers or different things.
I've
Where
worked for big newspapers. I've worked for the Baltimore Sun,
pretty big,
and
okay.
I freelanced for the Washington Post. And I don't know if you've heard of Newsday on Long Island. And then I've had essays published in the anthology series Chicken Soup for the Soul.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I had essay published in that, and then on some like bigger websites and stuff like that.
very cool. Okay. I know it talks about a lot of this stuff in the book, but it's like sometimes you have to repeat
Yeah,
it.
I toot my own horn, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay, so I'll kind of go through this chapter by chapter. Like the first chapter kind of is like British super fans, is that correct? If I'm reading
No,
correctly, or
no, it's not British. It's just
okay.
super fans. And a lot of those are the people that Susan put me together with. And then some of those, I owe a big thank you to, there's a tribute band on Long Island called the Liverpool Shuffle.
Uh-huh.
And they were so kind because, believe it or not, I'm very shy and I have trouble with public speaking. So they said I could come to their shows and say I was writing this book, and I couldn't say it. I said, "Can you please say it?" So they would announce it, and then I would get their fans to talk to me individually.
Very cool. I guess what it is, the first chapter is more like the probably the hugest fans of everyone in the book, it seems like, if that's correct.
Um,
There's kind of a running theme in all these. I'm trying to make sense of my little notes here. Or I can move to the second chapter because that one I do know the theme.
okay.
Second chapter I know is uh people getting tattoos and autograph tattoos and things like that. I never knew that was like such a thing. I mean, I know people have done it, but I mean, how did you get these people for your
I
story?
didn't know either, and I said in the introduction, my son, when he was 19, went to a festival called Firefly in Delaware.
Hmm.
And he told me somebody, that was around his age, got on stage with Paul and got his autograph on her arm. And, being an old mom, I said, that's going to rub off. And he said, no, mom, she got it inked. And I can't remember how I got the first story of somebody that did that. But then, again, it was word of mouth, and there's a secret Facebook group. So yeah, so everybody connected me to their friends who have the similar stories, and the theme or the through line throughout all those stories is there you are on stage with
Hmm.
Paul McCartney in front of tens of thousands of people, and you're not nervous because he's just so sweet and so humble, and
Hmm.
you're just having a conversation with him and he makes you comfortable right away.
Right.
Yeah, so
And
as a fan who's, I've never met him, and these people had the dream come true. And, I just feel like, okay, one of these days I have to actually have a story of my own.
so is that the way you have to meet Paul, I guess, is get a tattoo?
Maybe,
It's
maybe.
like, I mean, I've seen Paul many times, but just way off in the distance.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
um, but anyway, the one that I found most amazing in that particular chapter is the story of Nina Galpern. I don't know if you remember which one's which, but that's the one. She has the ugly foot,
Yeah.
and and she wanted to get her foot tattooed. And there's like a photograph of or two in there, and one of them she has her foot resting on Paul's thigh, and I was like, what? It's like, and I've never seen this in any Paul concert. So I mean, do these people just disrupt the show, or how do they do it? Do
No,
they?
sometimes it's true. Do you know that he does a sound check?
Oh
You can
yeah.
you can buy a
Okay.
special sound check ticket. So sometimes he does it during the sound check, which is before the
Okay.
show. But I think Nina, I think she was on during the show. So
Yeah.
what they told me he does is when he says, your signs are distracting me, that's when he's reading the signs and
Hmm.
picking the sign that he's interested in, and then he sends his security guard Mark Riddle out to get the person.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so she was lucky enough. She said she was in the same row or maybe behind the row of Nancy and maybe his children, and they all left.
Mm,
So then she was kind of noticeable because she was by herself,
hmm.
and her sign said "Trick or treats on my feet" because it was the day before Halloween.
Right.
Yeah,
But that in that chapter, that was the one that stuck out the most. I mean, people got their autographs on their shoulders, they got it on their arms, but this person, it wasn't just a foot, it was their ugly foot. So I was like, okay, it's, it stuck out.
it's a great story.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
got chills listening to all their stories.
Mhm. Was it hard getting to people to open up about their various stories, or
No,
people? Yeah,
no.
I didn't think
People
so.
love
I
telling their
didn't think so,
stories.
but yes, it's like prying out at
And I'm
people.
such a fan that,
Yeah,
my excitement hearing their stories kind of, cheers them on to tell me more.
yeah. And before we go on through the book a little bit more, which Beatles have you met, even in concert?
I
Uh,
haven't met any Beatles.
oh, I thought you said you saw Paul in
Oh, I've
concert.
seen
Well,
I've
yeah,
seen
that's what
in
I meant. I
concert.
said even in
Yeah.
concert.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen Paul and Ringo several times in concert.
okay.
Sadly I never saw George. He was my favorite.
Hmm.
And John, I was too young.
Yeah.
I was 18 when he was murdered.
Mm. I was planning to go when they casually announced in one of those interviews. He says, "Hey, let's take this on the road. That might be fun." I go, "Man, if he does an '81 tour, I'm there." And then it's like
Oh.
nothing. And then I almost did this. This is the Charles story too. This could be for your volume two. No, this is a boring story because I didn't go. Um, I almost went to Japan to see George in what was 92 or 93 or something like that. I forgot what year. Might have been 91.
I'm
Yeah.
tempted. Somebody's selling a VIP ticket to Paul in Australia. So I'm kind of tempted, but I don't think
Yeah,
I'm gonna do it.
maybe.
Yeah.
But in the case of the George one, it's like I had seen Paul, I had seen Ringo, and I said, maybe I should see George. And for some reason, I thought for sure George is going to tour the U.S. after he does this, and he never did. And it's like And talking to Charles years later, oh yeah, we did a special thing over there to Japan, and yeah, we did meet George. And it's like have him tell you the story sometime.
I should
Yeah.
ask Charles about Australia.
He may
He's
know.
going.
Yeah, he may know. Let's see. What do you got on the third chapter here? Uh, you have some interesting people in your third chapter. It's like you mentioned Bill Heckle of Cavern City. Um, Mark Featherstone is kind of an interesting one about the Liverpool Institute for Performing Arts. Were all these encounters the same type of thing, just word of mouth through different people,
Well, Mark
things like that?
Featherstone, actually, it's Mark Featherstone Witty. It's hyphenated.
Oh, Witty, yeah, I did have that written
Mark came up. Okay, so um, when I interviewed Vivek Tiwari, who's a very, very successful Broadway producer, 25 Tonys. His
down.
last show was Jagged Little Pill.
Yep,
Um, he wrote a graphic novel about Brian Epstein.
right. And that's in your case.
And when he was telling me about his interviews he originally wrote a thesis about Brian Epstein when he was in business school. And he mentioned the Liverpool Institute for Performing Art, and he mentioned Mark Featherstone Whitley, but very humbly he said, "I'm sure he doesn't remember me, and I don't have his contact info." So, being a journalist, I just wrote to the public affairs office at the school, and he said yes.
Cool. Very
Amazing.
cool.
Nobody said no. Not one person said
Wow.
no. Yeah.
Amazing. You got some good people in here. I mean, well, of course, in this chapter, you do have Charles Rosnay. Did you talk to him directly or just through Batya, who's a mutual friend of ours?
Oh
It
no,
kind of was unclear.
I spoke to
Okay,
Charles.
okay. I mean, it's not like you can't.
No,
He's
Charles
pretty
is so
very
open and friendly
approachable,
and
but
warm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and let's see, the next chapter you have like a few different famous people. You have Lawrence Juber, who was in Wings, or actually this one, Lawrence was in the book later, but this is really Hope Juber, who's Sherwood Schwartz's daughter and married to Lawrence, and she had some interesting stories. Let's see. Trying to think if there's anything I wrote about it that was anything interesting. Well, the sad part is she said John's death brought her to Lawrence, which is, I guess, kind of bittersweet. You know,
Well, it's a long story.
yeah.
I don't want to tell the whole story, but
Yeah.
she was very depressed. You know, she was a huge Beatles fan, and she was very depressed when John died,
Hmm.
and was in bed and wouldn't move. And her mom said, "Why don't you get your hair done?" And she thought, well, that's kind of ridiculous, but I'll make my mother happy. And being Sherwood Schwartz's daughter, Sherwood Schwartz created Gilligan's Island and the Brady Bunch.
Right.
So they lived in Beverly Hills, and so she went to a stylist in Beverly Hills, and he said, "You look sad." He said, "Go for a walk, and I'll be with you when you get back." And she went for a walk and bumped into Ringo. Yeah. And Ringo gave her a pep talk about how work was helping him get through. So it's a long road of connections
Right.
and coincidences, but the work she was doing with her dad on the Brides led her to Lawrence Struber.
And that was a very good story. Yeah, it is pretty lengthy. So yes, worth reading for that. Some of the longer ones are the most interesting ones
Oh,
sometimes,
thank
you
you.
know. um, Next chapter seems to have a lot of people just about marriage proposals, things like that. That was kind of an interesting idea and twist. I didn't even think about that, you know. How did you come across those? That doesn't seem like something you get through the normal channels, or how did you encounter these people?
Well, when I was interviewing Bill and he was telling me about International Beagle Week, he said, a lot of people have met there and gotten married. And I said, "Oh, can you hook me up with them?" So actually it
Fair
was
enough.
Clark. Clark, Clark Gilmore did a lot of work for me. I really appreciated everything he did. And yeah, he gave me all those contacts.
Mhm. Then the next chapter, probably the most famous one, is Peter Asher, who's the brother of Jane Asher, who used to go out with Paul, and Peter was part of Peter and Gordon. There's a long history there, people who don't know, but the whole chapter seems to be people who are DJs and do radio shows or some connection with the Beatles that way. Is that correct? Was it, I'm asking this every time, but is it difficult getting these people to, in your research, or did you have to go different avenues for each chapter and the different type of
Different avenues for
profession?
each chapter, but again, it was the kindest people hooking me up with. So what happened was, I was looking for stories about people that have met a Beatle, and I just put out a post on one of my Facebook groups. I said, "Who here has met a Beatle?" And yeah, and Darren DeVivo, who's a very popular DJ on a public station in New York, WFUV, which is a station. I lived in New York at the time, and I listened to that station all the time. And he chimed in and he says, "Oh, I've met a couple of Beatles several times," and I knew his name, because I listened to him all the time. And I just wrote back and I said, "Darren, would you be interested in being in the book?" And he said, "Yes." And he has a great story. And then he says, "You might want to talk to Dennis Elstis." So Dennis Elstis is on WFUV, but he's also a Beatles channel DJ.
Hmm.
And then Dennis connected me with all the other Beatles channel DJs.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, and then I
So,
want to mention Ken Dashow, who does Breakfast with the Beatles, and I don't remember who hooked me up with him. I'm sorry.
okay.
Yeah,
But there is a connection all these ways and
yeah.
everything like that. So that's pretty cool story. Um, then the next chapter, you're talking about different Beatles authors. One of them I know pretty well is Kid O'Toole, and she writes for Beatle Fan, and she's written her own book. She has her own podcast and things like that. I've done podcasts with her and things like that. So she's a pretty good
So
friend.
that was through Susan
Mhm.
Ryan. Yeah.
And yeah, that's probably how
Dude,
that's probably how
yeah.
I met her. Well, I don't know if you're aware of this. This is through Charles, but how Charles and I met is through this Australian podcaster who goes by the name of Plastic EP. So I don't know if you've done his show yet, but
Have.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I mean, that's how I kind of met everybody. You know, even if I knew Kid O'Toole's name for years because of Beatle fan connection and things like that, but to actually, you know, talk with these people, then I invite them onto the show. It's like, hey, I do a podcast, come on my show. And so she's been on
Yeah.
the show and different people like
You know,
that. So
everybody I talked to was just so warm and giving, and they love talking about the Beatles. They will talk
yeah,
for hours. They will tell their stories for hours. Susan actually, I was living on Long Island and she was in Queens, and she met me halfway. And after about 2 hours, I said, I don't want to take up more of your time. Oh, no, no, no. And she just went
yeah.
on. She's just so great.
I should
Yeah.
probably get her and her husband on the show, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
because I know them and that was a Plastic EP connection too. So
They
it's
wrote a
just
book,
yeah.
together with other tour guides. They wrote a book about the four Beatles cities:
Mm,
Hamburg, New York, London, and Liverpool.
okay. Well, I'll definitely approach them. I've been doing a lot of Beatles books lately, but I think a lot of it has to do with Charles has been hooking me up, and it just seems like right now there's a wealth of new Beatles books. I mean, in recent episodes, I've interviewed Lori Kay, who did the last interview with John Lennon, and she talks about her life in her book. And Gene Popa did a book. I forget if his is the one about uh, the British invasion. I get them mixed up which ones are which, but I mean, they're all kind of coming out at the same time. So I'm like, you know,
So
but let's see. And then like the next chapter, it seems like you have people that are in different tribute bands, like the Fab Four, Beatlemania, 1964, things like that. And
Liverpool Shuffle. Don't forget
yeah.
Liverpool
Oh yeah,
Shuffle.
Liverpool Shuffle. And let's see what else is it. Oh, the Fab Four, I said that. Oh, and the Help Slovenia tribute band.
Yeah, it's
How
it's
did you
called
get hold of
it's
that?
called Help a Tribute Band.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that was funny. That was just, scrolling through a Facebook group I'm on. I'm on very, so many Beatles Facebook groups, and there was a picture of the lead of the tribute band with Paul McCartney, and I just wrote to him and I said, was that you with Paul McCartney? And he said, oh, that's a great story, and that's how that happened. I just put it out there, and people were just so happy to talk to me.
Very cool. And then probably the rest of the book is just various stories. You even said they're not categorized very well. It's just, well, this one goes here because we have this, and like the last ones had some later stories that weren't like encounters back in the 1960s and things like that. But one person stands out is Al Sussman. He's another writer for Beatle fan that I know, things like that. So, are you a big fan in that regard to buying all the publications about the Beatles and everything as well, or
I'll
not so
tell
much?
you, in the 70s, when I first became a Beatles fan and I was a teenager, I bought every book. And then when I got older, I thought, oh, what else could they possibly say? I know everything. And then when I started talking to these people, I realized there's just so much more. And so now I'm buying the books.
Mhm. So, I always am curious. Obviously, we're probably roughly about the same age. I became a Beatle fan in 1977, and I've said the story on here many times, but I'll say it again. I was already a Monty Python fan, and I was already a Saturday Night Live fan, and Eric Idle appeared on Saturday Night Live in 1977 and sang a dreadful version of "Here Comes the Sun." And I asked my dad, what's the real song sound like? He goes, oh, we have it on the album. It's over there in the bin over there with all the other albums. And so I played it, and I go, oh, Here Comes the Sun. I know this song. I just didn't understand. It didn't make sense when, Eric Idle was basically yelling it. So, and I said, I wonder what else is on here. I flipped it over. The first song is Come Together. And I go, oh, I know this song. The next song's something. I know this song. And I didn't know every song, but I knew Octopus's Garden, and I knew like half the songs on the album. I go, this isn't right. You're not supposed to have all these hits on one record. That's the greatest hits album. I didn't understand, but slowly but surely, I became a Beatle fan about that same year. So, what's your story?
My story, I don't have an aha moment. You know, the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan when I was 16 months old. So it was just always, it was always in the background. I remember watching the Beatles cartoon with my sisters on Saturday morning.
Mhm.
But I wasn't a fan yet. I was 6 years old or something.
Yeah.
And then, and we went to see Yellow Submarine, my sisters and I. I'm the youngest. And I remember my father standing in the doorway going, you girls are going to get a headache from all that color. because it was still black and white TVs, you know.
Right.
And then I don't know, when I was 12, it just hit me. It hit me
Yeah.
hard. And I
Yeah.
had one of those bedrooms that was just covered in posters. I had every album, every yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was exposed to things like Yellow Submarine when, before that 77 date, but it didn't click for me and it's like I always tell people probably my first exposure to Beatles at all was Yellow Submarine on Sesame Street in 1969. So yeah, because I
I
heard
didn't know it was.
I heard that version with the Muppets before I ever heard of Ringo's version.
Yeah, well,
So
I knew Elton John's version of Lucy in the Sky, and I
oh
didn't
yeah,
know it was. Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
It happens all the time. This is an aside. I had a friend who knew Devo's version of Satisfaction before the Rolling Stones. He said, I didn't even know that. That one actually made me laugh because I didn't know the Rolling Stones version. That's like, what a different version. Anyway, um, so was it your plan? I mean, obviously you're a journalist. I assume you're still a journalist in your waking hours, whatever, your alternate life, whatever. Was it in your plans to do a book, period, or like these Beatles stories just started flowing together and you said, "Oh, I'll do a Beatle book," or you're just planning to do any book at some point?
Well, it was funny, I tend to buy a lot of books on writing, and I got another book on writing in the mail, and my daughter said to me, "Mom, you know so much about writing. You should write a book." And I
Mhm.
said, "I need to write a book about the Beatles." And I said, "You know what?" And then I thought of the fans. And the funniest thing is she does not remember that conversation.
Yeah,
But that's what started it.
yeah. And at this point, do you think you'll do another one or a book on a totally
I,
different subject? What do you have
yeah,
plans?
Plastic had a great idea, and I've started interviewing a couple people to do a book about Beatles collectors. And he's got a podcast about Beatles collectors. So, he's in the process of getting me on my way with that.
Yeah. Well, even in this book, you have a couple super collectors, so I'm
Right.
sure that they could give more expanded stories if you interview them again and stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh,
And then I thought a really great way, and I just thought of this yesterday, was combing Beatles auctions, and talking to the people that run the auctions,
yeah,
and what the biggest price they got was, and what the item was, and then talk to the people who bought it.
right.
Yeah.
There's one guy, I don't know if you listen to podcasts or view YouTube channels or there's this guy named Anthony, I think his name is Anthony Milner or something like that. And he's for Parlogram auctions. And he's all over YouTube. He does these he, just videos about like every Beatles thing, but he does get pretty in depth about the collector
Oh.
mentality about things. He's a British man, but he's based in Austria because that's where the company he works for is.
Mhm.
And so obviously he's European, but I'm sure it's easy through a connection like this. You can get in contact with him. But, I'd recommend him,
Yeah,
among
great. Thank
others.
you. I'm on
Uh,
it.
but there's so many collectors out there. I could just say, look all over the place. There's always somebody collecting
Yeah,
Beatles. I've had to pare down my collection. I still have like all the albums and all the CDs and everything like that. And but we were talking about books a little bit earlier. I can't keep every book that has ever been published by the Beatles. So somewhere along the line, I just had to pare it down, and I said
yeah, sure.
I can only keep like anything by Mark Lewis, and I'm keeping. Anything by um, Bruce Spicer, I'm keeping. Anything that's written by an actual Beatle, I'm keeping. And then beyond that, it has to be something about the book that'll make me keep it and say, "Oh, I gotta, keep
What
this
would you
further."
what would make you keep a book?
Basically the information in it. Like strangely enough, a lot of the books I've gotten rid of over the years are just the general picture books or the ones that don't have a lot of information. Because after a while, you can only look at pictures so many times, and it's like, yeah, I know. I'm a guy there.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, oh, Paul, I guess I
yeah.
could be
The
all
pictures
dreamy,
draw me
yeah,
in. I'm a
yeah,
George girl.
yeah, Yeah,
Well, now I'm a Paul girl, but yeah,
you know what I
no, the
mean. Yeah,
pictures draw me.
yeah, and they do to an extent, but it's just the thing of paring it all down. It has to have some information with it, not just picture picture. It drives me nuts if it's like a big picture book, and then it does have information and it's incorrect information. That drives me bananas. So if there's a book that I will get rid of pretty quickly, it'll be something like that. Unless it's something that was published like 40, 50, 60 years ago where they didn't know the
Right.
correct information. I'm not going to be that picky if it's, you know, but I'm talking about books published like in the last 10 or 15 years because there's still things out there, like the Paul is dead hoax is real, no, I don't want stuff like that in my collection, you know, or, exaggerated ones I think is Albert Goldman, and who wrote like an exaggerated thing on Lennon, saying there's enough weirdness in Lennon's life without making it up, I would think. So you know that's just my opinion about it. Um
Have you been
so
to New York?
I've been to New York a few times.
Oh, you've
I
been
bet
to the Dakota?
I have.
Yeah.
And to the Imagine Circle that's like across the street. I've never been on any official tour, but uh, when I was there in the vicinity of the Dakota, I overheard, a Beatles tour in progress, so I kind of eavesdropped. And they go, "Here is where John Lennon lived with Yoko Ono, and when they're making Double Fantasy, blah blah blah." It's like kind of,
I've read and then read that it's not true that she's finally moving out of the Dakota. I don't know if that's true or not.
well, I read this since that, because yeah, that was the original story that was kind of put out there. That I don't know if this was when John was alive, but they apparently own more than the apartment they live in,
Hmm.
and I think that's what she's selling off is the other ones that she doesn't live in. But it got convoluted that she's selling off where they're living and da 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 da. I
That
think
she was stayed or yeah.
yeah, I think she's gonna stay there till the end. It's like now whether I don't know. I guess Sean lives there still, or does he live somewhere else? I don't know. But it's a multi apartment complex that they have. It was never just like one
Yeah.
bedroom apartment. I
Yeah.
think they own like the whole floor or something like that. So um I would think it would be just like with Friar Park. It would just stay in the family unless times got tough or there was just some serious reason. I don't know why anybody would ever sell Friar Park or anything like that unless, you
But I
know,
wonder maybe their apartment in the Dakota would become a museum like their childhood homes in Liverpool.
it's possible. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I think Friar Park definitely would if Olivia decided to sell, but I don't see that happening. So but who knows? Stranger things have happened, but it'd be kind of a shame if it was just kind of thrown out there and, nothing happened with it.
Yeah.
But, um let's see what other things can I ask about. So are you a collector yourself? Because you said you're going to interview collectors, or you just like the music and the guys?
I move too much to be so
That's a good answer. Yeah,
I have boxes of pictures of my kids and that's about all I can handle.
yeah. Fair enough. I mean, not everyone's a Beatles collector in the same way. It's like my co-author. I did a couple Monkeys books with Michael Ventrella, and he used to have a big, vast Beatles collection. But with the advent of streaming and Spotify and things like that, he just says, "I get everything on my hard drive and through streaming." And he goes, "I don't care about the packaging and all that stuff." Whereas me, I love the packaging. So
Mm.
like Ringo's going to have a new EP out. I'm getting the EP 10-inch record and I'm getting the CD single because that's what I like,
Ringo's on tour now, and I'm actually seeing him in West Virginia on October 9th because I just moved to Maryland from New York. And, West Virginia in my head is, where the heck is West Virginia? But it's only an hour and a half from where I live. So, So yeah, I'm excited about that.
Well, I hope he does well. I don't know if you saw the news today. He tripped when he came on stage in New Mexico, but he looks like he's all right. So,
They said he jumped
yeah,
right back up.
yeah, yeah. Well, I saw the film. Yeah, he did,
Oh, I didn't
but
see it.
still, yeah. It was probably like a slippery spot, but he is 83 years old, so they're like, no, it's like,
I saw
but
the headline and my
yeah,
heart dropped, but
yeah.
then I said he jumped back up.
Right. But I did see Ringo in June. I've seen him a few times, but the funny thing that I've told people, I was out on the grass way in the back. I live in Eugene, Oregon, or actually
Mm.
Springfield. The concert was in Eugene. Um, and at the end of the concert, Ringo's doing jumping jacks on stage and
I
everything like
know.
that. And
No.
meanwhile, around me, I can get up fine off the grass, but there's a lot of people that needed serious help. They could not get up from the grass.
I know.
It's like, wow,
When I
this
was
guy's in
talking to Peter
incredible shape.
Asher, we were talking about that. When I was talking to Peter Asher, I said, Paul and Ringo are in amazing shape. And he said, yeah, that should be an inspiration to us all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I do think about that. I mean, my dad's still around too. He's 85, so he's older than them, and he's still traveling. He's on a trip right now, going to all five Great Lakes, and I keep getting pictures sent back to me, and he's all like this grinning and
It's
everything like that.
amazing.
It's
That's
like, keep it
amazing.
up, Dad. It's like
So you've
because
got good genes.
yeah. So I was figuring if he can go, I can do it.
You
It's like
can. You
yeah.
can.
So
Yeah.
that's the same thing with Paul and Ringo. I mean, I know some musical artists, they just want to throw in the towel after a while. It's not for everybody to keep touring. I mean, even in your 20s and 30s, I think it's a long slog to go touring.
Sure.
So when you're doing in your 60s, 70s, 80s and beyond, it's like, wow, it's like not everybody could do that. So
And the energy on stage, Ringo runs and jumping jacks, and yeah, he's amazing. And Paul sings for 3 hours. I think I saw him take a drink of water, but that was the first time I ever saw that in
ever in
30
a concert.
years.
No. Uh, I think I've seen him take a drink of water. I'm trying to think.
Have you? Yeah,
Yeah. First time I saw Paul was 89,
me too.
and yeah, and I that time I did hop a plane because I was living in California, but Northern California at the time, and I didn't know if he was going to tour again, and he was only playing in LA, so I hopped a plane to LA and saw him.
We were was it only one night? I don't remember, but we might have been at the
Um,
same show.
Maybe. Well, the show I saw, this will determine it. Stevie Wonder appeared at the end and they sang Ebony and Ivory. So
Don't remember that, but
okay, if you don't remember
I
that,
was in such a Paul McCartney euphoric stage. It's the first time I ever saw him, but it was in LA. I was living in
yeah,
LA.
I think he did. It was at the Forum. I think he did more than one show. I think he did 4 nights. But
Okay.
the night I saw him, Stevie Wonder was in the audience, and I actually spotted him with my ex-wife from years ago. Anyway, but I was looking through the binoculars and I'm like, look, it's Stevie Wonder, and she goes, yeah, it is. And I didn't think Paul would call him on stage, but he did. And they sang Ebony and Ivory, and as far as I know, that's the only time they've ever sang it live ever. So
Yeah, that's
you know,
amazing. I was lucky I saw Paul McCartney at Dodger Stadium in 19 when Ringo came on. So
that's cool.
that was amazing. And that was a gift from a cousin of mine who's in the music industry. So that's a huge thank you to him. Yeah, because I got to see the soundtrack for the first time and then, the show close up. So that was amazing.
Uh, and then, of course, Paul did swing around again, and he ended up in Berkeley, which is in Northern California. So I saw him again.
Oh,
And then
wow.
I saw Paul a couple times over the years. I think the last time I saw Paul was like 2005, and I could still see him. I keep following the tours and everything, but it's like he gets so expensive.
Does.
So
It's really
he,
expensive. It is.
yeah,
But
and
it's just, how much longer can he do it? So,
yeah, so I have my memories. Maybe I'll see him one more time. But I wasn't planning to see Ringo this last time. I had already seen him 5 times. But it was
yeah,
my current wife, she says, I've never seen Ringo. Let's go see him. Now,
yeah.
he was a little more fairly priced, I think. And so, I said, well, I can afford this. So, and so we went. And it turned out to be great because, so if I did see Paul again, it'd probably be great. It's just that you're just saying, been there, done that, but it's nice to see somebody. that you've seen before after some time and go, hey, they're still doing it. They're still up there, you know, peace and love, all that
It's a different
stuff.
show every time. And
Yeah, yeah.
Paul,
Mhm.
nothing beats it. Well, Paul and Ringo, nothing
Yeah,
beats it.
yeah. That was
And
probably
Ringo,
pretty
it's
cool.
such a fun show, with the All-Star Band, and it's different people all the time, and they
Right.
all do their songs.
Yeah.
It's a show.
And what was good about this, is if you're seeing in this tour, he finally does Octopus's Garden concert. And there's one other song he does. Well, he did Back Off Boogaloo, which he hadn't done in a long time. There's
Oh, I
something
love
else
that song.
there's something else he did in concert that he hadn't done in a long time either, or ever. But Octopus's Garden was the main one, and I was like,
You
all
know what I
right,
wish he would
yeah.
do? Do you remember the No No song?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
He,
wish he would do
he
that. That's a fun song.
He has done that one before, but way back. I think
Hmm.
he finally at least switches around, a few different things because there's a while there he's getting a little stale too, where he's doing like the same five hits it seemed like, and it's like, come on, Ringo, you got
Yeah,
20 albums, you could throw on a rare one somewhere along the line, and they are kind of expanding out. There's a few more surprises on this tour, which I won't spoil for you. But Octopus's Garden was the main one. I was like, all right, because he used to say on interviews, he says, "Well, if I'm doing Yellow Submarine, I don't want to do Octopus's Garden." And I go, "Why not? You wrote
I know.
that song. You're not proud
He
of your
wrote it
own
with
work."
George. George helped
Yeah.
him.
Yeah, but I mean, he didn't write Yellow Submarine at all. You'd think he'd want
Right.
to favor his own work just to kind of show, hey, I worked on that. I wrote this, but I get it, but I think he's finally come around. I think the band probably pressured him saying, "Come on, it's your song."
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it. It's I'm sure that's
I like your impression.
it probably isn't too far from the truth. You gotta see Ringo do okay, it's
Okay.
I bet he's stubborn in certain ways, which, he's a Beatle, he can be, but I'm sure in other ways if he has enough people saying, come on, you gotta do I'm the greatest, let's say, okay, I'll do it. It's like because I'm sure they sit down every time they do another tour and they say, all right, which ones are we doing this time, and you
It was
know
a lot of fun for me. This is off topic, but when my kids were little, we would watch Thomas the Tank Engine because
oh
he
yeah.
was the voice. He was the voice. Yeah.
So yeah, I used to watch that too. I even watched it when it turned to George Carlin years later. So, I've always been a Ringo supporter. A lot of people they're like, oh, Ringo he puts out garbage, and it's like he's only the Ringo album. No, I keep supporting him. It's like to me,
Uh,
if you're turning out new material, sometimes his music sounds kind of the same. I get it, but occasionally he'll put out a good one, and I just like to continue to support his work as long as he'll do it. So, yeah, but
and
I
just the
don't.
fact that he's still performing at his age, and he's still putting so much energy into bringing happiness into the world. His whole thing on his birthday, peace
Mhm.
and love at
Oh
noon on
yeah,
his birthday.
it's
That's
all videos.
beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and they seem to like I say this about Paul and Ringo. I say they seem to be in better shape than Sinatra was at that age, and like Tony Bennett was doing it until his early 90s, but he was starting to lose it there. So hopefully Paul and Ringo keep sharp minds and keep going for a while. We'll see.
It's
So
scary. Their ages are scary.
I know I try not to think about it, but it's like is I think as long as they feel youthful and continue the enthusiasm, I mean that's how Jagger and Rolling Stones keep doing it, and all those guys, so it's possible for
You
anybody.
still see pictures of Paul standing on his head.
Yeah,
So,
crazy. I can't even stand on my head, even when I was a kid. So
no.
yeah, uh, but some people have what's the word? Flexibility, good sense of balance and things like that. Not me. So it's like, but more power to them,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, I try to at least try to eat right, try to exercise a little bit, try to keep moving, try to stay youthful best I can.
Got your dad's gene.
Yeah, hopefully, crossing fingers. Yeah. Anyway, let's see, who is the publisher on your book? I didn't even ask that.
McFarland and Company McFarland and Company Incorporated.
That's right.
McFarland.
That's right. They sent me a copy of it, but I had forgotten that. Okay. And I guess we could kind of start wrapping it up. Basically, unless there's something else you'd like to say about the Beatles, but it's like, where can people get this book? Uh, Say the title one more time. And if you're doing
There's
any personal appearances or anything,
that's behind me.
you might have to hold it. Oh, okay, it's behind you too.
Where do I hold it? Oh,
Yeah,
here
you
you
can
go.
hold, yeah, right in front of you. Yeah, it shows up there.
So
So
it's Beatlemania Lives On, Superfans in the 21st Century. And you can get it anywhere online. You can get it on Amazon, thrift books. The best deal is probably Amazon. And it's on the McFarland site as well. But it's on Books A Million, thrift books, all the book sites.
okay. And are you doing any sort of signings or personal appearances in the next few months?
I will be at the Fest for Beatle fans in New York in February,
Okay.
and there's an event called Beatles on the Beach in in Florida in January.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
this will definitely be uploaded before that. So, uh, if you want to get a book and have Dana sign it, this is your opportunity. Or you'll probably have copies of the book there too, right? Where you're
Yes,
going.
I will.
Yeah,
But,
yeah,
I can only carry so many, so
that's true.
so if you want to bring a book, that's fine.
And any plans for any tours to England again or anything like that in your future?
Well, I'm hoping to get to International Beatle Fest, Beatle Week in Liverpool next August.
Okay. Because yeah, that's when my tour is with Charles.
Yeah.
Crossing fingers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Charles actually has a table there where he
Yeah.
sells his book, Top 10 Beatle lists.
Hmm.
I will have a table somewhere nearby.
Very good. I don't know if I'll bring any of my books. I mean, I could bring my monkeys books, and I did do a Beatles book, but it's so old I don't even promote it anymore. But
What's
it's
your Beatles book?
my Beatles book is called Mark Arnold Picks on the Beatles, and it's a self-published thing I did about 12 years ago. It was like the second or third book I ever wrote, and it was just my reviews of all the Beatles songs, group and solo and everything like that. And I basically, it was kind of a tongue-in-cheek work. And I got people, in lieu of using a lot of photographs or something that might be copyrighted, I got friends of mine and just people I didn't even know, but mainly friends, to contribute various pieces of artwork. You could draw one Beatle or all the Beatles or whatever. And so there's like cartoony drawings, there's very realistic drawings. I put my own drawing in there because I can draw. And, it's just kind of a fun thing.
Sounds
Um,
really interesting.
the front cover, I could run over and get it, but Bill Morrison, who's a longtime friend who worked on The Simpsons and things like that TV show, he was working on this Yellow Submarine adaptation for Dark Horse Comics, and for some reason at the time they killed it. The Beatles killed it and said, "Yeah, we don't want to put this out." And so he had all this artwork just unpublished that was beautiful. It looks just like the artwork in the film.
Uh-huh.
And so he says, "Here, use some of it." And so I put one of them on the cover and I put
Wow.
various pieces inside. Years later, Titan Books took it over from Dark Horse and they published it. It's still available. It's a Yellow Submarine adaptation in a nice graphic novel hardback. And they used some of the artwork that I had put in my book already. It was all right. It's like I got to publish it first, so there.
You go. You
And
got
of
the
course,
debut.
but my book's only in black and white, so if you want to see it all in nice color and rich,
Put down your book. I'm sure you put a lot of work into it.
it's just I always see it now as kind of dated. Maybe I should update it, and then I'll like it better again.
Yeah, you
Because
should be proud of
it,
it.
it only goes to 2011.
So many people, have the intention of writing a book and they never finish it. So you should be proud that you did it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think I don't think highly of it just because I self-published it, unlike my other books. which were through Bear Manor and different publishers. So, you know, so yes, I won't badmouth it anymore. Done. Yep.
There you go.
Thank you.
To your own
Thank
horn. You finished a book and it's beautiful and there, yeah.
All right. Well, since you are planning to be in England and Liverpool that next summer in August, hopefully I'll meet up with you in person, and I'll definitely be with
Charles, I'm
Charles.
sure, will introduce us.
Yes, he'll probably get us all to take photo together and everything like that.
Exactly.
He
Yeah. Have a
seems to
beer
take a
together.
he seems to take a photo with everyone. I was looking at different photos he's posted, and some are old and some are current. I go, is there a person on this planet he has not taken a photo with yet, except me? But
But he's met so
mine's
many
coming next summer.
yeah, he's met so many incredible people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to me. It's like he'll just pop up a photo, like he popped up one I saw today of him with Cynthia Lennon. It's like,
Mm,
oh wow, and it's
I
like, yeah,
know.
oh yeah, we were pretty close, and stuff like that. And it's like, it's just never thought about it, all the different people he's met over the years. So, you know, so
I'm thinking I'll bring my book and throw it on stage to Ringo. What do you think?
I get Ringo's tattoo. You can But yeah. Well, it was fun talking with you,
Me
and
too.
I usually upload these a few weeks in advance. I mean, we record them a few weeks in advance, so this will probably be up sometime in October. But it's plenty of time for the Christmas rush for sales, and if you'd like to see Dana Klosner at the various venues she said, or next August in Liverpool or England, she's making the rounds with her book, which again is called Beatlemania Lives On, Superfans in the 21st Century. All
And I
right.
just want to say a fan wrote a review and it's the perfect log line for the book. It says, every Beatles fan's dream is to meet a Beatle. And this book tells the story of those who did.
Very good. All right. Well, again, thank you again, Dana, for being my special guest. And this is Mark Arnold for another episode of Fun Ideas Podcast. And we'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.